Welcome back to the CoDaKrew podcast. Today we're covering match week 21 of the Premier League, and if you don't already know how this works, our current scores and scoring system are on screen now. That being said, let's get started with the Manchester Derby.
I'm going to start with United. They have obviously been a messy place in the last few months, and especially this last month, and that has shown up a bit on the pitch too. Under Darren Fletcher, there's been a clear attempt, I think, to restore attacking initiative. More bodies high, Fernandez close to the box, and a back four that has now been designed to support possession rather than simply try and hold on through games. And against Burnley, that approach worked in spells. They created volume of attack, and Fernandez was able to reassert himself as the team's creative engine. But it's the same problems beneath the surface with United. It doesn't matter that Fletcher came in for Amorim. They still give up goals too easily, particularly in transition, and moments of loss of defensive concentration just continue to undermine whatever dominant phases they can find. Both Burnley and Brighton punished them that way. It's a team that they can look like they're in control, but they're never really secure in their games. The promise is real with this roster, but the margin for error is painfully thin right now, and it's going to keep causing them problems, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think at some point it's fundamentally just not about the manager anymore. It is about Ineos, because if you want to transform a team that is really just like a mid-table squad that just happens to have a already built-in fan base at this point, you have to commit a lot more, and you can't just, put all the blame on the manager. That is what the strategy is right now, but you're not going to be able to build a team back up into being a true Premier League contender in such a competitive league unless you take some initiative. And we see the problems in the roster. I don't think there are enough experienced players, for example. I think that is a big component as to why they're really sort of throwing games, especially in the second half. There is no real identity of the squad. Yes, some of that you can say is partially due to injuries, players being out from AFCON, but I think we've never really seen that this season or really recently. And maybe, Michael Carrick coming in and they're going to go back to the 4-3-3. They're going to play attacking, fun football again, but I just don't think that that's enough to actually challenge for the Premier League or do anything that, this club is supposed to strive for.
Yeah, I mean, Carrick can make a few tactical shifts, and they could have some improvements for United. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of problems beyond just the manager here. I mean, against City, I think the test is not whether United can suddenly outplay them. I don't think it's going to happen, but they just have to try and look coherent without the ball, which they've struggled with, I think, and less self-destructive in key moments throughout the game. If that happens, even without a strong result, I think it would signal a better direction for them. But yeah, they really shouldn't be expecting a win here at all. Maybe even a draw is kind of questionable, but I'll get to that. Now, speaking of draws, actually, City have had a lot of them as of late. And you could say there's cause for concern with their title charge. But even if Pep is not at his usual heights, I think they played pretty well in their last cup game, and I'd say things are still looking up for them. The wide play was quite assertive. Wingers pinning Newcastle deep for most of the game, circulating possession patiently. They forced the Magpies into very long spells of defensive work, where the pressure was really just all going Newcastle's way. Semenyo did well in his debut, and of course, you had a Cherky late goal, showing City's ability to manage those big moments, even when the rhythm has gone for just a bit. They were able to find that even when the game wasn't going especially well for them. And again, it's not peak City, but as we know, City can go from decent to seemingly perfect at just about any time, right? So since they're doing pretty well now, I think we just have to assume they can come into this game at their best.
Yeah, I think I remember during the first round of the FA Cup when they were playing, there was memes going on about why is Manchester City playing Erling Haaland? Why are they playing their A squad against this poor non-league team and beating them 10-1 or whatever the final score was? And I think that is just brilliant man management from Pep, actually. Yes, normally you would play a B squad, you wouldn't, you would rest your players, but you have to look in the context. City, in their last three Premier League matches, their attackers were really not good. Turkey and Foden, who are really stepping into their element more in the last few months, really kind of fell off a little bit during that time. Erling Haaland wasn't really stepping up either, and so I think it was a good decision actually to play their starting 11 in that match because it gave the front three the confidence. They regained the confidence they need in order to go back and try to make that title charge. Maybe it's a little bit too late for a title charge, because it's just going to be very tough to catch Arsenal at this point, with being 6 points clear. But also looking into doing well in the cup competitions, obviously they have a solid chance of winning the FA Cup. They're still in the other competitions, so yeah. That being the case, also bringing in Semenyo, as you said, who has now scored in both of his first two matches for Manchester City. If it weren't for these two cup matches, I think United would have a much better chance. But now I have a lot of faith again in City's attack and their ability to convert chances.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, I think this game's going to follow a pretty similar, familiar pattern for United right now. They will have moments, spells where the structure looks more clear, where Bruno gets involved higher up, the crowd starts to believe there's something building, and you may see some of Carrick's influence showing in this first game. But again, those margins are already thin, and even more so against their crosstown rivals. I think United can make it competitive for a while, but City's patience should eventually tell and they should be able to find a lead. I'm going to say they score 2 goals to start. I think United can find one back, but they never look especially threatening to equalize. And I'm going to say that's how it finishes with a 2-1 for City.
Yeah, I see something like that. I could probably, honestly, potentially see United score first, and then they sort of drop off later at the end of the match. I also do have a 2-1 scoreline. What I will say that we haven't mentioned yet is Mbuma will be back for this match now that Cameroon are out of AFCON. So the front three is fully back, and I do have to say that obviously a weakness on Man City is their defense, their fullback defense, and that is a trade-off that Pep Guardiola has decided he's willing to make at this point. But I do think that United can probably use that to their advantage. They can play a counterattack. I think they will be able to get a goal off of that. But even if they do end up playing well, even if we do start to see, maybe not the tactics there, but the identity there with Carrick. One big thing we have seen with Manchester United a lot recently, especially with new managers, is so often they will look good, the fans will be optimistic, but they don't end up getting a result. I remember this is what happened in their very first match of the Premier League season against Arsenal, and I sort of think that's going to happen again, where things look good, the fans are going to be optimistic about, but at the end of the day, Manchester City get all 3 points. So I'm also going to say City win this one 2-1.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, next we have Chelsea, who I'd say have been having some serious trouble holding on in games as of late. Do they have it in them to find control against a Brentford team who not that long ago was not looking too great, but recently they have been thriving in like fast, uncomfortable games, which I feel like is exactly what Chelsea don't
They're
want right
they're
now.
in a Europa. They're probably in a Champions League spot actually right now.
Yeah.
Given I think the Prem is most likely going to end up having 5 spots, which yeah, pretty crazy. I will say first off about about Brentford. I don't know why I said Bournemouth. What I find interesting about the Premier League this season is I think at the middle it's very even, but there aren't a lot of truly not even contending but truly elite teams this season. I think that's the only reason why a Brentford has found their way back into fifth, a Liverpool has found their way back into fourth, etc., etc. And so what I will say is I think that does play somewhat to Brentford's advantage. I think they can win a lot of these games against teams that are not quite there, that are missing a few pieces, and I think Chelsea definitely fits into that. And right now, tactically, things are just looking really good for them. They've basically employed a Villa strategy where because they now have a weakened midfield, because they have a weakened defense, they're just going to go at you direct. Their number 10, whoever it is, Damsgaard, Jensen, there's a rotation there. They're basically just going to play as like a second striker, and they'll go at you, counterattacks, long balls, etc., etc. Brentford have really figured out a way to play into their hands, to play into the roster that they have, and not a lot of teams are capable of doing that in the Premier League right now.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm sure they're going to come into this game with a lot of confidence. And with how well they're controlling the duels right now, how ruthlessly they, and particularly Thiago, of course, are finishing off the goals, I wouldn't blame them for being confident. Against Sunderland, they didn't control the whole game, but they were sharper in just about every key moment. They won the midfield battles through Janelt and Yarmiliuk. They broke the lines quickly, and they turned half chances into goals. And you have Thiago there, who was great against Sunderland, and now he is going to be the ultimate stress test for Chelsea's centre backs. Physical, quick over short distances, and he is lethal when the space opens up. Ultimately, Brentford, they do not need long spells of possession. They are comfortable just letting their opponents have the ball, and when the structure breaks, they strike. And Chelsea has a tendency, as of recent, to let their structure break. They lose shape after turnovers, which they've been creating pretty often as of late, which I think plays directly into Brentford's strengths.
Yeah, and another big question coming into this match is I would argue this is probably Liam Rosenier's first real test of Premier League competence. What I mean by that is one thing that's very unique about the Premier League is all of the big leagues, they're at the top very heavy, right? And Rosenier has a lot of experience with that, managing Strasbourg. But how much experience does he have in a league where every match, if you're not playing at your very best, you can easily get a draw or even lose? That's what the Premier League is. There are no rest weeks. There is no room for experimentation. At least safe
Dude, not even
experimentation in
not
the
even
Prem.
Wolves is a rest week anymore.
Not even Wolves, exactly.
It's
Wolves now all of a
yeah.
sudden is getting results now. It's too late for them to stay up, but they're going to pose a challenge to teams. Yeah, I mean, I do rate Rosenier. I think he's gotten a lot of unjustified hate so far, but I kind of see this as potentially a welcome to the Prem moment. And I will say there are some similar structural issues in Chelsea as there were to Manchester United, as I was talking about earlier. I do not blame Enzo Maresca for. I mean, I know it was a mutual agreement, but really, he got sacked is what happened. And I do have to chalk that up mostly to internal factors that were going on. Once again, I blame the management. I don't blame him. I think he was doing the best with the players he had. When you have, such a lack of experience in a lot of positions, in a lot of key positions, such as, you're playing Shabala and Fofana as a center back pairing. And yes, I know um, I know there's injuries there, but still, I think there you do need to have somebody experienced in there if you want to be a true title contending squad. That combined with an inability to really deal with counterattacks, as you're saying, Igor Thiago is being the perfect antidote to the two center backs that Chelsea has. I think this is going to be. I think this could be the first time we see Rosenior truly crack under the pressure.
Yeah, I mean there are reasons for optimism. You had Garnacho just a few hours ago against Arsenal. Like they Chelsea have a good bench, of course. They can change games off the bench. And Delap finally scoring should help his confidence as well. And the front four has enough pace and creativity that they can hurt anyone. But again, Brentford with their pace and with their strong finishing right now can also hurt anyone. And the margin for error, like with that last game we covered, United City, the margins are thin here. Maybe not as thin for Chelsea as like when they were playing against Arsenal, but thin nonetheless. Again, Brentford won't need sustained pressure. Two or three mistakes could be enough for them to find all the goals they need. And at that point, I think it's up to Chelsea to either defend a lot better than they have as of late or just try and outscore Brentford. And I don't think either one is going to be easy for them.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get into my prediction at this point. Yeah, I fully agree. Brentford, with how good their offense has looked recently, even if they get fewer chances, if they're good counterattacks, if they're good quality chances, I think they're just going to convert on them. And Chelsea, as good as they are against the strong teams, I mean, this is another thing we say about Chelsea, and I think this partially does come to the inexperience point. They can give Arsenal a run for their money. I mean, I think it was a deserved win for Arsenal in the end, to be clear, but there were moments that were a little bit nervy for Arsenal in that match. Chelsea also got a draw against Arsenal earlier in the season when they got a red card. But their issue has always been these sorts of matches against these scrappy mid-table squads. And Brentford in particular, Brentford have a very good record against Chelsea. I think they have equal wins and losses in their last 10. So the way I see it, Chelsea are still adjusting. There are still some weaknesses in the back line. I honestly think even though they'll get most of the possession and probably most of the chances, I think Brentford give Rosenier, once again, that welcome to the Prem moment. And I'm going to say Brentford win this 3-1.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I also have four goals, but I'm going to go a little bit differently from you. I'll say 2-2 draw. And I do think, yeah, Chelsea, given how they've struggled to protect leads lately, the priority for them is not going to be control. It'll probably be to be aggressive, and they will get most of those chances. That approach will bring the chances that they're looking for. But then that also creates exactly the kind of like open, uncomfortable game that Brentford can absolutely thrive in, which they have been thriving in. And every Chelsea turnover again is an invitation for Brentford to strike back, especially with how clinical Thiago has been. I don't think Chelsea are going to have that hard of a time scoring, but they're definitely not going to shut the door in the other direction either. So yeah, I'll say 2-2 draw and Brentford leave Stamford Bridge with a pretty well earned point.
All right, well then that brings us to Leeds vs Fulham. Two squads who I would say they've been actually performing pretty well as of recent. We obviously saw that Leeds 7-goal thriller in a match that they did ultimately lose against Newcastle. What are you thinking for this one, though?
Okay, I think with Leeds, yeah, the Newcastle game was a great watch, and summed up for me, well, why this team is so compelling, first of all, right now, and also why they're still a work in progress. They were very brave, very proactive, and they carried genuine attacking threat throughout the whole game. They did take the lead three times, of course, at what I would say is one of the league's toughest away grounds. Um, I think Aronson's resurgence is a huge part of that. He has confidence between the lines, sharper decision making. That has really transformed Leeds' attacking balance. But then you have the flip side as well, which is that they can be emotionally volatile. They struggle to slow the game when the momentum swings, and eventually they don't have control. Admittedly, neither does Newcastle in that game, but the late moments get very frantic. They went into stoppages up one. They ended the game down one. And while you could chalk some of that up to bad luck, they were under immense pressure from like the 85th onwards. And I don't think they handled it as well as they could have. Ultimately, this is a side that they're still learning when do they need to pause, reset, and try and protect what they've built. And I think, obviously, like it's a very good performance for a team that a lot of people were thinking would get relegated by season's end. And it
Not us,
doesn't
by the
seem like
way,
that's
just
going to
to be
happen.
clear.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But yeah, they have stuff to learn. I mean, they're a championship promoted team. I don't expect they're going to win everywhere, and I don't think this is going to be a completely easy game for them either, by any means.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I will say a lot of this. I mean, like you said, Chelsea's first season in the Prem, they obviously don't have the quality of a lot of the squads here. They're really just doing their best. And yes, we can criticize. Maybe Farkas should have been more conservative in the second half, let's say, but he isn't really working with a whole lot here. They are also dealing with some substantial injuries in the defense and the midfield, and so that sort of result, and it's not a one-off thing, but that sort of performance that we've been seeing for Leeds for the last, let's say, 1 month or 2 months, I think should give the fan base a lot of optimism for the future because I see a real coherent plan. A lot of the other teams that are fighting for relegation, even if you can even say Leeds are still fighting relegation, a lot of those other teams do not have a tactical identity. There's a lot of belief in the team. The players not giving up. The morale is high, and so I think Leeds should be feeling good about their position right now. And in a match like this against Fulham are another solid mid-table club. Um, they're obviously not going to be pushovers, but when we look at the tactical matchup here, I think it is to Leeds' favor. I would say Fulham's biggest weakness continues to be their double pivot. Leeds' biggest strength is their midfield. They're overloading midfield, and so I don't know that Fulham will be able to keep up with Farke's tactical system.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. And I mean, Fulham did win against Chelsea, so like you can definitely say that they've got a threat for themselves. They do look quite comfortable just sort of letting games come to them. They didn't dominate the ball, but they did dominate the moments that mattered. But yeah, they don't chase games very recklessly. They do trust their structure, and that can be good against some opponents. But of course, Leeds are a team that are very proactive. They, like we said with the Newcastle game, they took the lead three times. They kept going for more goals. And yeah, I just don't know that Fulham's approach of let the other team break down and we take that as our opportunity is quite going to work against Leeds. Because if they do that, you might just get blitzed, go down 2 or 3 goals, and now,
You
well,
might
maybe
get
you can
house
wait for an
treated,
opportunity, but you'll be behind the whole game, right?
right? And that is basically all Fulham can do right now because, like we said, there's weaknesses in the midfield. I will say Raul Jimenez had a really big jump down this year in the Premier League. Harry Wilson has been good, but it's getting to the point where he is just like this one trick pony that Fulham happen to have. He's gonna be clinical. He's gonna keep them out of relegation, but there just isn't a whole lot of flexibility that Fulham have with their personnel right now. So yeah, I mean, like I said, if you get into a situation like a Crystal Palace situation where you let Leeds control the game and they score a goal or two, they go up like let's say 2 goals by halftime. I don't think Fulham can find a way back. So that's basically the direction I'm seeing this match go. I think Fulham can always basically just find a goal through Harry Wilson, to be quite honest. But Leeds are going to dominate. I think Leeds will get an abundance of chances. Their finishing has improved substantially as well, especially Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And so I'll say Leeds get a 2-1 win.
Yeah, I think Fulham are probably the more consistent team right now. They manage games well, and they are good at turning long stretches without the ball into something productive. But Leeds are playing with urgency, right? The sense that they've really got to go out and get those points rather than waiting for them. And after letting the Newcastle game slip so late, painfully, that hunger will be dialed up another notch because they're also at home at Elland Road. And Fulham are going to have their spells, but I just feel like Leeds, with that amazing home crowd behind them, are just bound to find the right chances for themselves. So I'll say they also get a 2-1 win.
Right. Well, then that brings us to your club, Liverpool, against a really in danger Burnley side.
Yeah, I mean, to start with my team, for a Reds team that, like, right now needs its attack firing away all 90 minutes if we want to ensure that we win games, we've had some issues there as of late. Against Arsenal, we really did not do much at all for the first half at the Emirates. I would say we were a lot better in the second, circulated the ball well, overloading the midfield, and we pushed Arsenal deeper and deeper. But it all felt a bit toothless. I want to say we had one shot off the bar, but technically nothing on target. Right? We dominated territory, but ultimately we rarely threatened Raya's goal, even in that second half. However, this is Burnley we're playing. We can expect more chances than earlier, and perhaps maybe even more importantly than exactly who the opponent is. Ekatike is expected back to lead the line here. So this should be, maybe won't be, but definitely should be a game where we can once again turn good possession into multiple goals, and preferably more than two, so we can avoid another Fulham debacle. And
Right.
yeah, if we can just score early, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think honestly, Liverpool have been very hard to judge all season, and that Arsenal game, I just don't really know what to make of it because on the one hand, I think it's fair. Like Liverpool, yes, they pushed for a goal. Maybe they should have scored one, but at the end of the day, I mean, both teams didn't both teams get what they wanted. I mean, like Arsenal probably just wanted to get a result there and maintain their lead at the top of the table. And I think Liverpool, I mean, given the position that you guys are in coming into the season, can you really complain about a draw against probably the title champions? I don't think so. So I'm not really going to, look too much positively or negatively, to be honest, from that performance for Liverpool. And I will say, the offense obviously has been questionable. I think we're seeing the hero ball that we saw from Chelsea last season on this Liverpool squad. But to their credit, I do think the midfield and the defense, part of it has gotten better, but I think the real thing is that it's gotten more cohesive. We're not seeing like midfielders and defenders not really knowing where they're supposed to be in transition, for example, not knowing like when to support each other when one player, let's say, presses up or overlaps or etc. in the offense. And I do think that that has contributed a lot to Liverpool being more stable at the back. And I will say against the Burnley squad, yes, Burnley are getting better at creating chances. Yes, they're getting better at finishing. But I do think at Anfield, even with how much Liverpool have struggled at points in the season defensively, I think Burnley are really going to struggle to score here.
Yeah, I think Burnley's plan at Anfield is going to be pretty familiar. Sit deep, protect the box, and just hope moments fall their way. I mean, it worked pretty well against Liverpool earlier in the season, where a strong low block and a bit of luck for the home side meant that we needed a late Salah penalty to get us the away win. But we're once again going to be testing Burnley's concentration constantly, even more so now that we are at home and they're trying to survive as the away team. And on the other hand, Burnley just do not create enough chances to relieve any of that pressure. So if they want a chance at a point, they'll need just another night of last ditch defending and near perfect discipline, which to be fair, they were able to accomplish for the most part in that last match they had against us until that handball at the very end, right? But even then, unless our attack goes back to being shit like we were in late November, early December, I think it's very hard to see Burnley avoiding long stretches pin deep and ultimately giving away at least a goal or two.
Yeah, I think they're also quite vulnerable to the gegenpress, especially the Ekatike gegenpress that we've seen. Sort of like a Klopp style defending that Arne Slot has finally sort of developed into the squad. Burnley, I don't think I have the quality to counter that, and I'm just going to play it safe here. I think Liverpool should get a comfortable win. I think they'll probably get a goal early. I don't see Burnley really finding their footing to this match, and they won't be expecting to anyways. So I'm just gonna say Liverpool get a pretty clean 2-0 win.
Okay. I'm going to go the same margin as you. I'll have a 3-1. I don't think Burnley will be especially threatening attacking wise. It's just that I really do not trust our defense right now. Um,
Fair.
yeah, I don't have much reasoning beyond that. Like, I don't know if you saw our cup game against Barnsley. Admittedly, it wasn't a defender that made that mistake, but if you saw what Sogo did right in front of the net, where he tried to back heel it and gifted them a goal, it's
Look, yeah.
our back line does not hold up nowadays. So I'll say unless we can like maybe find a transfer there, I don't have too much hope, unfortunately, that we keep a clean sheet. But 2 goal margin regardless.
All right, fair enough. Well, then that brings us to our next match, and I believe that is Sunderland against Crystal Palace. Two clubs that we talk quite a lot about for different reasons on this channel.
Yeah, I'll start with Sunderland, and of course we've talked about their many great stretches throughout this season, and I for a second I was thinking with that Brentford loss, 3-0 down, very ugly on the scoreline. Yeah, it didn't look good for their form, I felt like, but they bounced back with the cup win over Everton, and not only did they go through to the next round against strong competition, they showed that they can still be a very balanced team. They only had at this point one player back from AFCON, that being Siddiqui, and with what I would say was a great display from him, they were able to steady the midfield a lot more, recycle possession under pressure. Lefay got more freedom higher up, and I think that added control is exactly what Sunderland need right now. They are at home for this game, and I'm sure the fans will bring the energy as they consistently do for their home games. But I think now what Sunderland can and should be trying to do is slow the game down a bit more, reassert control in midfield, and avoid those chaotic stretches that Brentford was able to punish. And I think as the team starts to get back together, we see all the core players come back. They will continue to gain a better grasp on their games, and we can expect their form to turn up quite a bit.
Yeah, I think we should definitely take, the last, let's say, month with a grain of salt. Obviously, AFCON really hurt Sunderland. The fixture congestion really hurt Crystal Palace. And both of those, let's not say fully easing, but going back to normal, let's say, because I do think Sunderland are still missing somebody at
Uh,
AFCON.
Mondava, I want to say.
Mondava?
Actually, I'm not
No, I
sure.
think Mondava should be back by now, right?
Yeah,
What is
I
he? He's from
think
Mozambique, right?
right.
Bournemouth,
I
am I
want to say
correct?
they had like
Yeah.
5 players that went. I think there
Oh
is
man.
one for Senegal, who's still there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, most of the squad is back. With with one exception. I really should remember this, but I can't for whatever reason. Sunderland are going to be a lot better, and even during the stretch, even with all the players that they had out, they were able to maintain their record of not losing a match at the Stadium of Light, and that was including a match against Manchester City that they played during the stretch. So it's going to be very difficult for Palace here. Palace obviously also a very solid squad. I think there have been improvements, but I'm worried about their offense, and I'm worried about just their ability to adjust to such a hostile stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Palace here, in contrast to Sunderland, in which they've gotten some form back, Palace, as we've said in our last few videos, look like a team that is running on fumes right now. No question. They did draw Villa. They showed that they can still create moments even with this very like roughed up squad that they've got. They can still defend in numbers and they can do a decent job against good competition. But I'm sorry, I can't ignore the cup collapse against a 6th tier Macclesfield side. Even
Right.
playing away.
By the way, just for the record, it's Habib Diarra who's playing in the
Okay,
AFCON final,
there we go.
which
I
is
don't know.
pretty significant. I can't lie.
Yeah, that is a pretty big loss for Sunderland. But then, like, as for Palace, because okay, even playing away against Macclesfield, even with some rotations, I don't think this performance could be chalked up to much more than just complete mental and physical fatigue. And that's obviously not just going to disappear in this next match. Too many games, too many injuries, not enough leadership on the pitch. Again, really not down to them. They just don't have the players for it right now. And they just have been left looking disjointed. There's a general sluggishness in their defensive reactions, especially on set pieces, which lots of teams have exploited by now. And while Glasner's going to try for control through like Wharton and Hughes, if Palace can't keep their shape, Sunderland might just be the next team to bring the energy and just completely overwhelm them, especially in the wide areas.
And in such a physical game like this as well, yes, you're going to have somebody like Adam Wharton. He can unlock a defense, but you're going to have to be very clinical with your few chances, and that continues to be an issue for me with this Palace side. Mateta's still not been in good form at all. Brendan Johnson hasn't really found his feet yet at this club, and honestly, I just look at Brendan Johnson. I'm very perplexed by this transfer because he is a guy that's like, your back post finisher, your positional winger, whereas like the archetypal winger for Glasner's system is somebody who can drop back and contribute to the build up play more, which is just not Brendan Johnson's style. But anyhow, maybe he's signed for the finishing. I don't know, but anyhow, it's just I worry that it's going to be like a sort of Xavi Simons sort of situation where he doesn't get the ball enough to really make the impact that he wants to. And we also have Yermi Pino, who's been fine, but Palace obviously their attack has been taken a big step down from last season. And once Ismail Assar comes back from AFCON, that's probably going to be a big help. As for now, when you're not able to be super clinical with the few chances you get in a match against at the Stadium of Light, I think Palace will be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. I think after what happened at Brentford, Sunderland are going to want to slow the tempo down, make this a disciplined performance. And if they decide to take the game slow, I don't think Palace, with their complete lack of energy, can stop them. They're going to have some moments, I'm sure, but sustaining pressure for this team is just such a big ask. And if Sunderland can stay patient, avoid giving Palace too many transition opportunities, and just keep the crowd engaged to back them up with their energy, I think they can make this almost like an Arsenal game, what a lot of the games Arsenal have been having lately, where they can just score one, and that is all they need because they can just completely shut out Palace at that point. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen, and I'm going to give Sunderland a 1-0 win here.
I can see that. I would say Sunderland is probably going to win this through physicality, and I do think when that happens, Palace are prone to making unforced errors. So I can see Sunderland scoring a goal maybe like around, let's say, near the start of the second half, and then as Palace try to find their way back into the game, they just collapse, and Sunderland is able to get a second off of that. So even if Sunderland, let's say on the stat sheet, doesn't look that much better, I think that they will be able to get a pretty solid win. I'm going to say they win this one 2-0 at home.
Okay, fair enough. Next we have then West Ham, who are really struggling in the relegation zone at the moment. Can they pull something back against one of their London rivals in Tottenham, who also kind of
Are kind of struggling
questionable
right now,
right now?
for being
Yeah.
honest.
What do you think here?
Yeah, two managers that are really in the hot seat here, and with all of the sackings that have been going on in the Premier League, and also elsewhere, as of recent, these two managers are really in a world of trouble. I will say this matchup is really just going to be a personnel one, I think, because neither of these teams have shown a tactical identity. They're both just playing hero ball at this point, and so the question is who has the better heroes to put the ball in the back of the net. And I will say Tottenham, they really struggle with getting the ball to their front three. But when they do, they do have the quality to create good chances. And West Ham, while they kind of rely on the same strategy, I feel like Jared Bowen this year has taken a bit of a step back. And nobody else on that offense you can really trust to consistently finish chances.
Yeah, I think Tottenham, for one, they have been struggling to look coherent, especially without the ball. And I think that's where a lot of the recent issues begin. Even when their defensive setup initially looks sensible, they sit in a compact mid block, try to protect the center. It breaks down far too easily once teams play through that first line. And the midfielders, they tend to drop instinctively. They don't scan and step in, which then creates a lot of separation between the forwards and the midfield and opens up a lot of passing lanes that really should not be there. So again, it is easy for other teams to break through that first line, and once they do that, it's game over for that play. Yeah, so then defenders have to react late. The center backs have to step out. The fullbacks get dragged narrow. The structure just like okay, it out of possession anyways just does not work right now in practice. On paper it seems good. On practice you can just absolutely claw it apart. But I do think on the ball they're a bit better, and a lot of it is just down to personnel, like you said. But even if they're having their own issues related to attacking, I just think their attack's better than West Ham. That's all I can really say. Both teams might have similar issues, but if it's Tottenham's attackers versus West Ham's attackers, which is Bowen and Paqueta playing hero ball, and that's about it. For West Ham, I think Tottenham gets the better of them.
Yeah, I agree. And especially also, as you're saying, when the West Ham defenders have so much work to do, the fact that you're still missing El Doif to AFCON, I think, is going to be a big problem. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka should be back, but I am worried. And as you were saying, like Tottenham, their midfield looks questionable at times, especially in transition. But they definitely do have players who, if you give them the space, can be long ball pingers, and that's going to be a huge issue, I think, for West Ham. So I would just say there isn't honestly that much tactically I can say about this match. I think we basically just summed up how it's going to go. And with Todd getting more chances, they are a decently clinical side, I would say. So I think they will get the win. I don't think West Ham are going to be able to find a goal in this match. So I'll say Tottenham win this one 2-0.
Yeah, I have something similar. I just think that West Ham can find a singular hero ball goal, and it's going to come from one of two players. Hint: their initials make up peanut butter. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's yeah, 2-1. I think Tottenham find their two goals first, and West Ham get a consolation goal. But yeah, they're never gonna look like they're threatening for an equalizer because the one goal they find is gonna be out of nowhere. I don't think they're gonna have momentum. So I do not expect a draw here. I think Tottenham will come away with the win eventually.
That's pretty fair. And that being said, we're going to go now to Nottingham vs Arsenal.
Yeah, I'll start with Nottingham, I guess. I mean, they had the win at West Ham. I think it wasn't it's definitely not the best game I've seen from Nottingham, but were at least able to hang around long enough in the game for moments to swing their way. Second best for long spells, blunt in open play for a lot of the game, and definitely vulnerable to pressure. But they stayed connected defensively, which was good, and yeah, they leaned into the margins of the game. Uh, and there's a certain stubbornness here with this team, something that you would definitely hope for from a Dyche team. Uh, I just get the feeling that you really cannot get this Forest side out of a game for good, unless you go like 3 goals up on them. Maybe that'll work then. But yeah, you have like Murillo and Milenkovic and Sells, which gives them a platform to survive waves of pressure, and then you can get guys to draw fouls, slow the game down, and they can eventually find a moment or two to score. They're not really making many plays for themselves, and so they don't tend to score that much, and I don't expect them to see them scoring much here. But yeah, they can stay competitive for a while at least. Unfortunately, they're playing Arsenal, so a while in this case is like half an hour maybe,
Right.
and then I get the feeling things are going to break apart.
A while could be like 92 minutes, but it
That's
doesn't
true.
matter because
They
it's Arsenal.
it could be another 1-0 win. Arsenal can find late goals. They they had to find one against Wolves, which
That's right.
actually was not their goal, in fact, because they didn't
Yeah, I
score
mean,
any
listen,
that
they're
much.
very
But
strong front three there with with corners, throw-ins, and own goals for Arsenal. So
I mean, yeah, it's unfortunately for Nottingham, it's Arsenal. What can you say? They find a way to get a goal somehow, even if it's through you.
yeah, I mean it's kind of tragic for the football fan, for the casual fan, that the best way to counter anti-football is with better anti-football. But that kind of is the dynamic that inevitably will come to play in this match. Again, unless Arsenal are able to find a goal early and force Nottingham to really break their typical structure, there's no reason that Nottingham will play any differently. And like you said, they are a very stubborn squad. It is not easy to break them down. I mean, for example, even a City squad who's very strong, they had to basically rely on a Turkey masterclass and like long balls finishing to really secure a win there uh, at the City ground, and that's the situation that Arsenal have put themselves in. But what I will say about Arsenal is this season, it's so odd to say this about the squad, but they have been shockingly consistent. They are like the gold standard of what a Premier League team should be because I feel that at every stage of the season, forget the Premier League, the season as a whole, they've done what they needed to do. So they were able to adjust out of the injuries during a more congested fixture of this season. And now, as I think they've sort of gone out of that storm, they've, for the most part, I think, dealt with the injury crisis, and they still have find their way. They still have their status looking very strong. 6 points clear in the Premier League, in all the cup competitions, very solid chance for winning the Carabao. Uh, Obviously they get the extra rest from not having to play the qualifier in the Champions League. They're just in a very good position right now, and I think this is just going to be another match where doesn't matter if Arteta is able to get them to score early or if it goes late. I don't think it really matters. I think for this Arsenal squad, they're just laser focused on let's make sure we can get 3 points every match, and it doesn't have to be pretty. We don't have to get a crazy goal differential. At the end of the day, if we just keep winning, well, we're gonna win the league mathematically, right? So yeah, I don't really see how you can stop that.
Yeah, and I mean, like you could say the games as of late that Arsenal have played don't quite match the total control that they've had in games earlier in the season. But then you could also argue like, oh, well, one, they're coming out of the injury crisis, and two, they've played Liverpool and Chelsea, who are two opponents that have pretty good attacking threat, and that's not quite the case for Nottingham. Like I said earlier, Nottingham just aren't very proactive in their games. I do think Nottingham are pretty well set up to break Arsenal's rhythm, and I think they can do that for a lot of the game. It could perhaps go very late before anyone scores, but I think it's going to end up with the classic Arsenal 1-0 win that we were
Yeah,
seeing for much of the season
that's
before.
yes.
Yeah, like they don't need to fully control every phase to win here. They just need to not let the game get too scrappy. And I do think they can at least avoid that. So they'll find a one goal whenever, and that's all they'll need.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm gonna say Arsenal wins 1-0, and quite honestly, like I said, it does not matter when. I think honestly, with the control aspect for this Arsenal squad, sometimes it looks like they're playing out of control, but I think one truth about Arsenal this season is even if you think you have a chance, you don't really have a real chance until you've gotten past Declan Rice. and so, and then once you do that, you have to get past their incredible defense, right? And then you have David Raya, who doesn't even have to get tested very often, but he is a very competent keeper. So, Nottingham don't really have the talent to score against this Arsenal side. Very few teams do. And so, yeah, Arsenal won that win.
Yeah. Now, moving on to Wolves, who seemed like a guaranteed 3 points not that long ago. Apparently, they've now decided that they want some points for themselves. But can they do anything against this Newcastle team that right now are on pretty good form? I know they were pretty low down in the table before, but now they're looking for 4 league wins in a row. So even playing at home, do Wolves have what it takes here to find a point?
I mean, that's the volatility of the Premier League, right? Just like Brentford, Newcastle can not be looking in a good position, but then because of how close all those teams are, I mean, you get a few wins and then all of a sudden I don't know where they are. They're like sixth or seventh, right? Oh my goodness, that wasn't even intentional. I think they're sixth, right, in the Premier League?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Jeez, jeez. Um, both of these teams are on better form, and I will say I will start with Wolves actually because what I basically noticed is bringing in Rob Edwards. I think was initially not a good decision because he is somebody who likes to play offensive football, and that's obviously not going to fit Wolves' system. I mean, they don't have the talent to do that in the Premier League. And what I've noticed recently is in their last 3 Premier League matches, they've decided to just park the bus. I feel like this should have been the obvious thing to do for the whole season. But what I will say is, in the last 3 matches, they were getting dominated in possession by Everton until the red card. Obviously, after that, they took a lot more initiative as they should in that situation. And then in those 2 matches before then, when there were no send-offs, Wolves averaged 38% possession, which is significantly less than 45%, which is their typical, which has been their average throughout the season. And that, for context, by the way, that's more possession than a lot of teams that employ the strategy. Like, for example, Sunderland have a lower average than them. I think they're like 15th in average possession when they're clearly dead last on the table, and they're probably dead last in talent. So I do think that's the reason for the tactical switch. And against the Newcastle squad, who they continue to be, I continue to have questions about them away from home. I think that is definitely the best strategy if you want to try to get a result here.
Yeah, and I will say, I said a bit about this after they played in Liverpool, where they didn't seem like they'd equalize, but they did have it in them at least to put in some pressure here and there throughout the second half. Like they were kind of able to stay in the game, and I think they've improved that over the past few games, because then they played United, got a goal before halftime, and found a decent chance or two in the second, kept the pressure off just long enough to secure the draw. And they obliterated West Ham, of course, but now even going to this game versus Everton, they went behind, changed shape at halftime, and actually imposed themselves for quite long stretches after. So despite what you're saying, like they're parking the bus now, I think at the same time, with the opportunities they do get to put on some pressure, I think they're actually doing a lot better with those opportunities that they get as well. Ultimately, this team was spiraling, right? They certainly looked like they were going to end with the worst campaign ever, points wise. Maybe not deserved, because I know you've said the competition this season is a lot more stronger than like what
Yeah, I
08,
mean, in the
09
past,
when
in
Derby
the
did it,
past, like
right?
the promoted teams have not been this good.
Right.
So
But I mean, now I still don't think they escaped relegation, but they've rediscovered some competitiveness, and that worst Prem campaign record might not be so unavoidable after all now. Yeah, it's not looking too bad for them.
yeah, I agree. I will say, if it were a few weeks ago, and they were on this form, I would actually have them potentially getting a result here. But the issue is Newcastle have an ace up their sleeve, a player they've been hiding, not even in the starting lineup until recently. But you know, and I know who that is. It is Mr. Harvey Barnes. And every match he has started in the Premier League, this man has been cooking. This man will get like at least 2 goal contributions all by himself, and oftentimes they don't even come out of a tactical play. He's just there, and he is just doing some English messy shit. I don't even know how else I can describe that. So I'm sorry to Wolves and Rob Edwards, but there is no system that will prevent you from having to face that wrath. And so even if he doesn't have an elite night, just him being there and being a real threat on the offense puts a lot of pressure off of Anthony Gordon and Voltamade. And I will say that in the past before then, I think a lot of my issue with them away from home is just them being too one-dimensional offensively. And just that's the fact that they've gotten rid of that issue alone is a huge benefit for them. So I think Newcastle should be expecting all 3 points here.
Yeah, I think. Well, like I said, the last game for Newcastle against Leeds was, like I said earlier, an amazing watch. In my opinion, the highlight of the match week. Uh, it did have some defensive concerns they created for me for Newcastle. They did open up a few times in transition, but then like they also have a quite strong attack that they can definitely take advantage of here against Wolves. Even if Wolves do park the bus, they'll definitely find opportunities. So my question is just after the Leeds game and also the Bournemouth game they had, the 3-3 that went to pens, can Newcastle dial things down a little bit? Away from home this time around, that kind of end-to-end madness will be a bit harder to manage. Wolves, of course, are not a proactive team, but they can still take advantage of those chances. Like I said earlier, they've been doing it better as of recent. But yeah, I think Newcastle just need to be patient. Ultimately, that's all it really is for me. And I think Wolves have some more confidence, but ultimately, Wolves is still Wolves. They only have so much scoring threat on their team. They don't have too much attacking talent. Yeah, I think they find a singular goal at some point. Maybe it is just a consolation for Wolves, to be honest. Maybe even it goes similarly to the Liverpool game. It's just 2 goals first half for Newcastle. The Wolves find one maybe early second, but they never look like they equalize. And I'm gonna say it's a 2-1 for Newcastle.
Yeah, I agree. I think Newcastle, they're going to find a way to get a few goals here, even if, again, like Harvey Barnes is that guy right now. But I don't know if this is like a true resurgence or if this is just like, you know, if this is just one moment, like he is just having, this is just like a flash in the pan. But either way, Newcastle should have the offensive strategies to really dominate here. And I also agree with you. I think Wolves can get a goal here, but I think Newcastle is just going to be better. So I'm going to also say Newcastle win this one 2-1.
Okay, then we go to Villa, who were on great form, great form for a long time. They're not too bad right now, but they have had, what, 2 losses in the last 4, which is a bit of a break. So, can they get back to form here against Everton?
I will say, I mean, Arsenal though, right? Like it's not exactly. We have to give them. We
Right.
have to.
I mean, but then again, you could also say that it was 4-1, which is
But
a
it's
bit
also Arsenal, so
questionable.
I don't
It
care.
is Arsenal as well, so
So
yeah.
and it's yeah, like I mean, I'll be honest. Like I said, I don't remember what my scoreline prediction was, but I think I had Arsenal winning by 2 goals. So I mean, I like I said at the time, I'm just gonna repeat it again. Like when it comes to rivalry matches, form doesn't matter. Um, And we've just seen that again. And I know how good this Villa squad is. I mean, even after that, they're still sitting tied for second in the league in terms of points. I know, behind City on goal differential. Still only 6 points behind the title. I'm not going to pretend that they can win the title, but, just you have to put it into context here. They're still in a very good shape. I think they're practically a lock for the UCL at this point, assuming that there are 5 spots. And so they're just a team that gets it done, and they're, let's be honest, on paper and on form, it's vastly superior to this Everton side right now.
Yeah, I will say though that for Villa, I mean we've talked about the resilience before, right? They went behind against Chelsea and West Ham before that, then came back in both those games with good tactical changes and some confidence in their ability to score. And that's obviously not a bad attribute to have, but you'd hope that they start to become more consistent across entire games, and I do feel like that's still a problem for them. Against Palace, Watkins had looks, Tielemans and Rogers found pockets. And Villa spent very long stretches just camped in the final third. But the final action kept breaking down. And so with all that control, they ended up with, I mean, according to SofaScore anyways, as many big chances as Palace, barely more XG, and the same number of goals, 0. So I don't think Emery's system is causing many problems here. I think the Spurs Cup tie was proof of how great that system can be when the timing clicks. But in some games, this team just does not have quite sharp enough execution. And I hope that's just, it's not really a tactical thing. It's probably something that will just come with time. But yeah, that's kind of what they need. It's just better execution, better finishing of their opportunities.
Yeah. I think what I will say is, I mean, I say this all the time with Villa, but I think they're just a squad that they find a way to get it done. When a team is too good, then there's nothing they can do. But it feels like they will rise down to the competition, but they'll also rise up to the competition. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, the stat sheet does not matter. The amount of goals you score, did you score more than your opponent, is what ultimately determines matches. And if that's the aspect that we're looking at it, I'm not all that worried about Villa right now. Yes, an off match against Palace, so that is going to happen. But when I look at, like, on the tactical level, this squad against Everton, first off, Everton's midfield, very questionable. Gahey injured, Hall injured. What that basically means is somebody like a James Garner, or at least that's been the guy so far, maybe it'll be someone else, has to push way higher up into the midfield to accommodate for that 10 role, and to accommodate also for the piece of crap that they have to play at the striker position. It doesn't matter who it is, because both of them are shit. That, and also, by the way, Njai is still out at AFCON. There's just not a whole lot going offensively, and when you have to overextend your midfielders like that, that really puts you vulnerable in transition. I think that's a big issue. I also think a big issue is Everton's biggest weakness defensively is, like, crosses. And even though this isn't how Villa always play, we have seen at points in the season Emery's adaptiveness, and we've seen Villa, when they need to, go for the byline, be overlapping, and just play through crosses. So I don't see why they can't do that again when they need to against this Everton side.
Yeah, I think there is lots to like for Villa. McGinn and Rogers give them plenty of energy between the lines. There's Wendia to add unpredictability. Watkins' movement is a constant problem. And yeah, Everton's midfield, like, they can try and sit deep, but like you said, they've got personnel issues. And I think they've got other issues besides personnel, honestly, and depth problems. They have discipline problems. We've seen, I think, quite a few red cards coming from them as of late. Also, an attack that, like you said, is not doing nearly enough. Even with Barry finally starting to score, he's still not great. Beto's still dog shit, unfortunately. So they just don't have much margin for error to begin with. And then if the defense does underperform even the slightest bit, they can easily lose a game just off of that. And against Wolves, for example, they seemed comfortable for the second half for a while. They looked comfortable, but they arguably didn't have the margins to be comfortable. And I would say, personally, they did not do enough to grow their lead. So they just failed to put the game away, and once Wolves changed shape, they were far too easy to play through. And now going against a much better team in Villa, while Moyes has got them pretty well organized, without, like, they've not got Branthwaite, Keane is suspended, the back line is going to be under real stress. I don't know. There's just so many problems that this team is facing right now. They seem good for a lot of games, but they just get undermined by something every time. Whether it is depth, whether it is discipline issues, whether it's the strikers not striking, there's some way for them to lose. There's some way for them to drop points. Even just a point in this game is going to be a tough ask for sure.
Yeah. Should we just go into predictions then?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
I
Well
think
then,
you want to go first.
sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I think I've made it pretty clear what I'm gonna say here, right? I don't really see how Everton are gonna score here. I think like Villa just have a very solid defense. Yes, there's Jack Grealish, but I don't really see what else they have. Again, like there's no number 10, there's no striker, there's no right winger, and Villa are just better on all parts of the pitch. Emery is such an adaptive manager. For a while, Villa were just getting by with 1 goal margins all the time. I'm gonna say they do a little better here. I'm gonna say they get a 2-0 win, and maybe it would be a 2-1. You know, if Everton had all their best players, Emery would just be happy with that. But I don't even see how Everton are gonna be capable of scoring here.
Okay, fair enough. I am just gonna go with the approach though that like whatever Everton can score, Villa can score one more. And in this case, Everton has no attack. And their defense is decent, and I think they can definitely hold up for quite a while if they need to, cause Villa problems. But Villa eventually find their 1 goal, and I do not think they will need any more than that. So it's going to be a comfortable 1-0 win for me, for Villa.
All right, well then that brings us to our last match for the week, and that is going to be Brighton vs Bournemouth.
Remember a few videos ago I talked about Brighton's attacking waste? They've still got that. Against Man City, they created chances that most teams could only dream of at the Etihad, and they walked away with 1 goal and lots of regrets. The patterns are good. You have Matoma isolating fullbacks now that he's back on the team. Finally, by the way, it took so many different deadlines for Matoma to join. It's like
this man was 1 week from being back to full fitness for like 2 months.
yeah, niche reference for any Canadians here, Torontonians specifically. Matoma's like the crosstown of the Eglinton crosstown of football. That's what he is. Anyways,
Listen, you just apply that to like any city's public transit, and they'll understand. They'll understand.
fair enough. Fair enough. You have Gruda sharp arriving sharply between the lines. Rudder's still there stretching center backs with his movement. They're good. Like they have good players here, very talented players, and they're doing what they need to do. But whoever it is that has to take on the final action, they let the rest of the team down. It showed in spells against United, where Brighton were clearly the sharper side, like 90% of the way down the pitch, but they have allowed the game to feel closer than it needed to be. And Hertzler does have them playing like brave, proactive football, but they just struggle to kill games early. And when they don't kill games early, they leave the door open. And that is something Bournemouth in particular will happily exploit and give if given encouragement. You can go 2 goals up against Bournemouth. Like, I know I'm stretching way back to the start of the season for this, but when we played them, and they are happy to claw their way back up to 2-2. So if you don't score early, you're just letting them go ham on you. Assuming the attack does well, which for Bournemouth it hasn't been perfect as of late, but they have attacking threats, man. So you've got to make a move, basically.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think as Semenyo was leaving, Bournemouth's attackers finally got back into the form that we saw last season, and that is basically what Bournemouth is now. I think they're just back to last season's defaults. I guess with a weaker defense, and obviously they're missing some players in the midfield still. But yeah, I mean, Brighton. I feel like I keep saying this, but they're just a streaky team. I will say, yes, they probably should have done better with their chances against Manchester City, but they also got so lucky for City to only score 1 goal. I mean, in the second half, there were multiple chances where they just gave City the ball in the box. They just, I don't know, man. I know City, there's something with their front three. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, I just don't really have a lot of faith in this Brighton squad right now. And both of these teams are sort of finding their footing still. I think Brighton should do better on possession, but I don't trust their finishing, and I honestly, it's kind of crazy I'm saying this, but I just trust Bournemouth to take advantage of their chances a lot better.
Yeah, but then I'm guessing you'd probably say Brighton would get more chances, though, right? So
Yeah, I
Bournemouth
will.
are more efficient, but Brighton would get more chances. I think I have an idea of what your conclusion is going to be for this game. I'll just say about a bit about Bournemouth. Um, I mean they're pretty volatile, right? Just as a facet of how they play, basically. They're thrilling going forward, but they're still very open defensively. I mean, even after selling Semenyo, they still look dangerous in transition, and they are quite effective when the games stretch. But they concede early, give up space in wide areas, rarely struggle to reset once their defensive structure is broken. And that will all be tested against Brighton, assuming that Brighton can do a good job of just circulating the ball patiently. But Bournemouth are a bit like Nottingham, maybe even more so than Nottingham. They're just always in games. When things go against Bournemouth, when they go like 2, 3 goals down, they
They're
always
like a
seem to
more.
have.
They're like Nottingham if Nottingham played attractive football.
Yeah, good attacking football. I mean, that's just they're like Nottingham in that way, but then when Nottingham are parking the bus, that's almost like the opposite of what Bournemouth are going to do. At the same time, I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, Bournemouth are going to be very awkward opponents if Brighton, especially if Brighton fail to put chances away early on. You could even have Bournemouth going a goal or two ahead. But I think, yeah, Brighton are going to have the ball for long stretches. So ultimately, it will be them that control much of the pace of the game. They definitely get more chances, but they don't take them very well. They haven't been finishing very well in their past few games. Like I said, attacking waste. I think they're going to be wasting chances again. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to say it's a 1-1 draw for me. I think Bournemouth just do more with what they get, and so Brighton have more chances, and it all evens out.
Yeah, basically you know what I'm gonna say, right? Brighton have more chances, going for a better finishing squad, so it's gonna be a 1-1 drive for me as well. Um, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say. These two squads are just they both have their own flaws, but it's gonna even out in the end. So there you go.
Okay, that concludes then match week 22 predictions for us. I know it has been a little while since we last hopped on. Not that long, I'd say, but then again, because the match weeks were packed in a bit, we did miss like 2 or 3 of them. Two, I think, 20 and 21. But yeah, thank you everyone for sticking around. I think it's been about an hour. I know our video's still a bit long at the moment, so we do appreciate you sticking around. And yeah, with that said, Darian, any last thoughts on these matches? Anything you're looking to watch specifically?
First off, Manchester Derby, of course,
Right.
and then I mean I do have to keep my eye on Arsenal as well because I feel like there's always this lingering chance, right, that they might drop,
Bottle
that
some.
they might
Well, that's
somehow,
what they do, right?
that is
That
what
that
they do,
is
but
just Arsenal, yeah.
if we're speaking objectively, I just can't really see the signs of that happening right now. But we'll
True.
see.
I don't think if it's going to be any team that gets it done, I'm not sure it's going to be Forest. Because, like I said before, I just don't think they're active enough. So I feel like Arsenal break them eventually. Maybe some
But
other
at the
team
same time,
can find the
because you don't
upset.
expect it to be Forest, it would make total sense
It
for it to
would
be Forest.
be yeah, a good storyline, I guess. Yeah, if that works out. Yeah, definitely the derby I will be watching, and then I guess Sunderland Palace could be interesting. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of Schadenfreude on my part, but just because like Palace are so off at the moment,
Right.
and
The
you know that
Machada
they were
hate, the Machada
terrorizing
hate
us.
watching.
They were terrorizing us not that long ago, so it does feel just a little good to see that they're also struggling like we were. Yeah,
Right.
that's all.
That
Uh,
fair enough.
yeah. Well, thank you all for sticking around, and yeah, stay tuned for another set of match week predictions coming to you soon. Have a good one.
See ya.